So picture this. You are an Ohlone person living in this beautiful land that's been here for as long as your ancestors can remember. You've tended to the land, you've stewarded the land, you've lived in harmony with the land. Some people might call this a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but it was much more of a permaculture type lifestyle, and it's all you've ever known. And you know, you've grown up, but all of a sudden you get some new neighbors. These new neighbors don't look like you. They don't talk like you. They're different, they're mysterious, and they're actually really nice. And they're building this beautiful building out of adobe, and you're pretty welcoming. You're like, hey, what's up? You go and you meet them. They're interesting, they're fun to talk to. They come from a whole different place. And they offer you an idea. Hey, let's join forces. We've got all this land, and we're talking massive amounts of land, right? Let's do some farming. Let's do some work together. Let's create some great things. We'll even like hook you up with a place to live, and this is going to be awesome. And you're like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And so you go and you join forces, and things start off pretty good. These new people have different ideas, new paradigms. They teach you about different ways of looking at existence and at spirituality. And it's interesting, the stories that they tell. They're compelling. They're fascinating. And these rituals and things that they do, well, they're kind of fun. Why not join in? But it goes so beyond just religion, because they introduce you to lots of different ways of life, different ways of growing food, different ways of relating to your food, your environment, your culture. Everything's different. And it seems kind of cool at first, but after a while you're kind of like, all right, well, you know, I think I'm going to go visit my family. I think I'm kind of ready to maybe go back to my old way of life. And that's when the chilling truth dawns on you. You can't leave. It reads like a horror movie, like a cult, because these people had weapons that far outpowered you. You were now a prisoner. You'd lost your family, your culture, your identity, everything. And you had to embrace this new way of life or die. I'm here today at the San Jose Mission in California, and you can see this building behind me. It looks very old. It looks like something that was built in the 1700s. However, this building was built in the 1980s. And I share that with you because it is a recreation of a building that was here before. And yeah, I do love that we're preserving our history. I love that we're rebuilding and remembering it because it is important. But the problem is that it's a very watered down history, and it's a very one-sided history. And I think that we need to really look at it from many different angles, because for thousands of years, there were people here before this. This was Spanish colonization. And it led to the California we know today. I love California. California has a rich identity and history. And you know, one of the things I love about California is we have our own architecture. It comes very much from these old missions, from that style. So we have a lot of Spanish words, and we have a lot of Spanish and Mexican influence because we were once part of Mexico. And, you know, I don't know how much people in other states learn about California's history. I don't know how much they really even care. But it's interesting to me, not only because I live here and because I love the state, but also because, you know, I was in Boston just last year, and I learned about a lot of the things that were going on the East Coast around the same time as Well, this mission was originally being built, which was in 1797, I think it was. Don't quote me on that. It's around there. It was the late 1700s. So it was like after the American Revolution, but California wasn't part of the United States back then. It was still a Spanish colony. So in terms of historical, like time period context, our history doesn't go as far back. Our written history doesn't go as far back as it does on the East Coast. And yet it it's not that there wasn't a history here. It wasn't that there wasn't a lot of things that were happening here in California during that time. We just don't have as much of it written down. And I come to a place like this and I think about where it all came from. And I realize it's what makes California, California. We had a Holocaust here, a genocide that happened. And in terms of history, in terms of human history, it was not that long ago. The wars and the battles and the things that took place right here in my state, in the places that I walk every day, are not that long ago. And I can't say that I'm proud of everything that happened here. I mean, a lot of bad stuff happened, but on the other hand, it's what makes us our own sort of entity. And I think a lot of times people come to California who haven't grown up here, and they just see us in the context of the United States. And what they forget is that California was actually its own country at one time. It was actually in between, and I think it was only a matter of like a couple weeks, but in between the time that it was part of Mexico and it was part of the United States, it was its own country, its own sovereign state. California is one of the strongest economies in the world. And I think that we are very lucky to have that here. And I think that a lot of the rest of the United States probably don't even understand that. Look at the hummingbird. Look at the hummingbird. Okay, anyway. I don't think a lot of the rest of the United States really understands how valuable California is to the whole nation. So as I look at the architecture of these missions, you can see these red roofs and things. It's actually very uniquely Californian. You actually see that in like Taco Bell. Even Taco Bell is like a representation of the mission times. You see along this road, I'll see if I can show you these bells. You see these bells? They're all along this road, and they're actually supposedly follow the entire El Camino Real, which is a road that was the original Spanish road between all of the missions. And all of the missions were built to be like a day's journey, probably an hour now, but like a day's journey, so that travelers would have places to rest. And it's a little suspect to me because, as I mentioned, this building here was only built in 1985. It was a recreation of the original mission. And because what had happened was in 1976 was the bicentennial of the United States. And it was a time when we started to reclaim our history, started to become more interested in history. And so a lot of our historical societies and people wanted to rebuild our history so that we could have something to hold on to, a feeling of identity as a state. And I have mixed feelings about this because on one hand, I'm a historian and I love history, and I'm so grateful that people take it seriously enough to want to rebuild, to want to create places like this for us. And yet those histories are so convoluted and one-sided and not inclusive of the reality of what this was to a lot of people, because it wasn't all beautiful, happy roses where, Europeans came in and saved the people who were here. They killed a lot of the people who were here. They enslaved them they took away their culture and created a new one. A new one that I embrace as a Californian. Right or wrong. You know, I don't think we're going back to how things were before, you know, the European settlers came here. It happened. So we've got to learn to exist within that and try to understand history from many different paradigms. So I just wanted to share this with you. The idea of very strongly controlling organizations. It's not just about religion. It's not just about culture, business, economics, all of those things. The danger of manipulation and being pulled into these sorts of things, it's still happening today. It happened in the 1700s here in California, and it changed the very landscape of what was here. And I think we have to go forward learning from history and deciding, what do we want to take and what do we not want to take into our future. Hope I gave you some food for thought today.